Welcome, Helen. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. Just
So
letting people
excited
in the
to
room.
have this conversation.
I'm trying to get Raf to save all her good Sally quips for the crowd. Don't spend them too soon.
Can I just say even before we begin, I do not blanket dislike Sally. I like a lot about Sally.
I
I
love
we will get
conversations with
into it.
friends. That's my favorite.
Well,
Really
yeah,
like.
yeah, we could totally dive into that because I think that's I'm gonna withhold Sally commentary.
Okay,
There's a much to recommend her.
welcome everyone. Welcome to Raf.
Oh, hey, Sarah. That's a Sarah I know. Very sweet.
Raf and I are joining to you today as two millennial women who have both read Famesick and Adult Braces. We're here to talk about millennial women writers.
That's how we identify as women who've read those books.
That's how I identify. Yeah.
Personally, yeah.
And if anyone's watching this who read my Bluebeard's Castle essay, I have Raf to thank for editing that piece because I had this is behind the scenes, but in the original draft I sent Raf, I had one mention of Bluebeard. And Raf said, "Are you going to explain what this fairy tale is?" And then I was like, "Oh my God, that's the key that unlocked the whole essay." So you get a lot of credit for helping with that essay. And I really thank you. You're a great writing teacher, a great editor, and a great friend.
Lee, thank you so much. And can I just say that essay, there's a reason that went as viral as it did. It's a tour de force. It's a stunning essay. And I think I remember quote restacking it and being like, oh, the whole internet kind of realizing that you can do like hybridized literary criticism. Like the whole internet is like, oh, that's right. A lover's discourse was a thing. Or like Maggie Nelson exists. But like the way Lee, the way you thread those things together was just stunning. So
Thank you. For
bravo.
those who are unfamiliar with you, do you want to give a brief introduction to who you are and what you write?
Absolutely. My name is Raf, short for Raphael Frumkin. And although my initials also spell out Rebecca Ann Frumkin, another name I'm known by, and I am a novelist, author of 3 books: Confidence, The Come Down, and Bugsy, so non-chronological for you. And I was once a professor of creative writing in an MFA program at Southern Illinois University. I am now, thanks to in large part the help of Lee Stein, really pivoting a lot of the teaching I've been doing onto this very platform. So more kudos is due to you there, Lee, for that, because it's just so cool to see how stepping out of the academic background does not mean you need to stop teaching and talking
Mm,
about writing. So,
that's so true.
yeah, that's who I am.
I'm pro Substack forever. Um, why don't I start us here? So one thing I noticed in my, 6 weeks long journey of discussing the Lindy West memoir is that
Your journey.
I kept getting comments from people that are like, I don't even know who this woman is. Why am I being forced against my will to learn who Lindy West is? Like, who cares? Who is Lindy West? And the more I think about this, the more I think it's so curious because it makes me feel like the boomers made such an impact on popular culture. Like we could sit
Yes,
here and name boomers for the rest of the hour who have
I
impacted popular
absolutely.
culture. And to me,
Yes,
Lindy West is a pivotal figure in millennial feminism and like this kind
yes,
of writing of the 2010s. And so I just started wondering, like, how many millennial writers can people actually name? And I posed this on Substack, right? I said, without
yes,
Googling off the top of your head, like, who would you say are the, you know,
yeah,
defining millennial writers of our time? And people can name a few and we could list off of those. But to me, there's like a kind of sadness or bittersweetness because I'm like, I'm an old millennial. So I'm in middle age. I'm in my early 40s. And I feel like for my generation, like we made our mark in the 2010s. And some people published one book and never published again. Some people got like Lena
hmm
Dunham got famous. But who are the millennial writers shaping culture? How do you think about that question? Like I feel like Lena Dunham was like, it's like this is like the best we have in many ways. Like in terms of a creative talent, she really does represent a lot of the millennial generation, in my opinion.
Lee, it's such a great question. I saw that when you asked it. And I too was kind of surprised by the answers, but I think we're standing athwart of like a very a weird like breakage in time, right? Because I always come back to this for us, but because we're like digital natives, but like in the Microsoft Paint, and it's
Oregon
not as if
Trail.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not as if like when we experience the true like crazy contraction dilation of time that is happens with like 24-hour news cycle combined with like, oh, it's social media, oh, it's the phone in hand kind of stuff. We were adults whose brains were almost nearly formed, so we were kind of like mid to late 20s, right? And that has put us sort of athwart of reality in an interesting way. Because it's you're right? A lot of millennial writers, and they're like culture shapers who did make their marks in the 2010s. But I think what we don't understand is that life is long. And so I have the really, really good fortune of being friends with folks who are in their late 50s and early 60s. So this we would describe as like Gen Xers, even like youngish boomers who are writers
Mhm.
and who, when I would kind of talk to them about like, whoa, there's this wild internet trend, this, that, or the other. Like I'm saying the words young Turks, and they're like, what the hell? Like, and they tell me, listen, we didn't really know careers kind of go in arcs and cycles. People put out different work at different times. We didn't, when we were 36, we had no idea who was going to kind of shape the conversation. And then by the time we were 56, we were getting surprised again. So I think that question, well, it's a good one. We are inclined to be like, "Oh, we missed our window. We missed our window. We have," and I push back against that.
It's like too soon to
A
say.
Luddite. Yes, it's too soon to say, but and there are also people who did have culture shaping voices who have either petered out or come back in really interesting ways. Both Lindy and Lena are in that picture. So yeah, it's nuanced.
And I think, I mean, this is just such a pleasure to read. And
Yes.
I think at the end she says that she wrote it for 7.5 or 8.5 years. Like it's so clearly
Yes.
retrospective. It's written with the gift of
Yes.
hindsight, like the best memoirs are. And I think she balances this like um voice of innocence and voice of experience. Like she can inhabit the 23-year-old self and tell us what she was thinking as a 23-year-old, and she can look back in her late 30s on this time. What did you think of Fame Sick?
I mean, I as a person in our age demographic, I put my thoughts out on the internet. We'll link to the essay I wrote about it. Fame sick, dope sick, love sick is what it's called. And Lee, here's my thing. This was like the whole Lena Dunham career arc is for me really paradigmatic of a certain type of millennial angst. I loved the book. Reading it in 2026, I was like, it felt just like you. I was like, I love her writing. I would sit down to a novel by Lena Dunham or a short story by Lena Dunham collection any day. And when I read that Rachel Syme interview before Too Much came out in the New Yorker, it was a really interesting moment because now this is like well over a year ago, if not more. And I was thinking like, I felt this kinda, like, crumple of shame because I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Lena Dunham was brilliant." And Lena Dunham was dogpiled on, and I think I know why, and I revisited Girls, and then the essay that resulted from that, I was very jealous of Lena Dunham, is pretty much exactly what it says, to me, and this is not across the board, but to me, a lot of the blowback that she was getting, that she describes getting in that book from the kind of New York blogosphere or the young literati who are her age, um, it was couched in this privileged discourse, right? Of like, oh, Lena Dunham, like she had access to these spaces, and like so did like Brian Williams' daughter, so did David Mamet's daughter, and all this jazz. And it's not that okay, sure, there was resourcing that maybe that someone who was born in a really impoverished state in Iowa didn't have, right? But this was, I think, kind of a smokescreen for the real issue which was, well, she doesn't look like Margot Robbie, so like she looks kind of like a person, like she's cute, right? But like I'm cute. She's just a normal woman. Oh, but she's also a genius. Screw that. Screw her. She got no, no. And it was very much this like we'll talk about the 2010s millennial feminism, which is just the feminist third wave trickled down through the blogosphere. I don't know why. Yeah, but we'll talk about that. But that was kind of a feature of those spaces where it's like, and I know you've written about this beautifully, where, I'm gonna participate in cancel culture or call out culture. I'm going to call you privileged or exclusionary or, insert ism here. And there's also a sense as I'm doing that of, I want to take you down because I want what you have.
Yeah. And it's been
Yeah.
interesting. It seems so obvious that a lot of her critics are just jealous of her, but she has said that she won't
Yes.
say that publicly. Like she herself does not say
Yeah.
that. And I think she
Just
has
it.
said, I can't remember where I read this, but she said like no one wants to hear me say like no one wants to hear me say like they're just jealous. Like why do people hate you so much? Like no one
I
wants to hear her
oh,
answer. They're just jealous. But watching it, you're like,
it's
and
so clear.
even I didn't as far as I remember, I didn't participate in, like, public takedowns of Lena Dunham, but there is a joke in Self-Care from the point of view of Khadijah, the Black main character in my novel, and I have a joke in there that Lena Dunham sends her a DM, like, asking her to be her Black friend. So even I was, like
I remember that.
I was
Oh, I remember
participating in,
that.
like, the Lena Dunham is like a punching bag, an avatar of white privilege, but there was that moment where everyone said, like, "Why is girl so white?" And you could see her trying to make Black friends, like, that really happened, and so I made fun of it.
Well, I mean, but hear me out, right? It's like this is less about was Lena Dunham at age 25, 26, 27 susceptible to the hellacious public pressure of, the kind of like internet hyper woke stockading that might have been happening at that time. Um, or does Lena Dunham like do these like ham fisted, awkward, clumsy, attention grabby things? Yeah, like of course, right? I think but it's less about that. And I think it's more about like the embodiedness of it all. It's more about like, the end of the day, Lindy West was a fat feminist, right? Lena Dunham is a like woman who just looks normal. And we learn in the pages of Famesick was actually told by Jenny Cotter to eat more because it doesn't work if Lena's too thin and too hot, right?
That's right.
Lena's just kind of a normal person. Lindy's a fat feminist. They're both feminists, and that is really, really, really where we're seeing the rub here. That's I think the struggle because it's like you can't have it all, Lee. It can't be the case that you're a genius, right, or brilliant creator who's capturing the Weltanschauung, whatever you want to call it, of a whole generation in an HBO show, and you look normal, and you publicly say, "I think you guys might be jealous of me." That's a bridge too far.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
the
like,
is a s body images is such an interesting part of this conversation because
mhm,
I think Lindy Lindy basically built this and they have different bodies, so I'm not saying the women have the same bodies, but
right.
Lindy made being fat part of her personal brand, and she was
Yes.
really about kind of angrily dispelling the shame about that, but I think what makes people uncomfortable about Lena Dunham is that she doesn't seem ashamed on girls, she doesn't seem ashamed of her
She
body.
doesn't seem ashamed of
And I
right,
think the public is like, "How could this woman who looks like that not be ashamed to be naked on television?" And she wasn't ashamed.
right.
She wrote the role for herself. It's not like there's some like, I was thinking of, like, Sydney Sweeney in Euphoria, who said, like, "Why did I have to be topless in all those scenes?" Like, someone wrote that role
I
to
have
look
an answer
topless
for
all the
that.
time.
Yeah.
But Lena Dunham wrote
Like,
that herself. No one was asking her to be so naked.
oh gosh, Lee, this is such a great point because yeah, when we're talking about Euphoria, we're talking about cut and dry male gaze stuff. I could go on about Euphoria, but I won't. But like in Lena Dunham's case, I think it's so worth reading Famesick for folks who might be like confused about that aspect of girls. She is someone who grew up. She would have gone to a Marina Abramovich show and seen Marina naked with, Carol. She's standing between, Carol Dunham and she's Laurie Simmons, these conceptual artists who are her parents. And she's watching, adults have sex as a part of whatever, like it's a part of like an installation at the Met, and that's fine in their family, right? And so and to me, right, like obviously that's that the issue doesn't come from that for Lena. The issue comes from this assumption that the rest of the world is going to be able to not have a kind of a puritanical response to her body. Right,
Mhm.
and I'm reserving comment for it's like, whatever, okay, people you raise your kids the way you raise your kids, right? That I'm not even going there, but I'm talking about, like, Lena has watched bodies at, like
Yeah, she doesn't have the
this
same hangups that you and I nice girl
she
tend
doesn't
to
have
have.
like, she's seeing all the South Beach diet shit, but she's
Yeah,
also going to the Guggenheim.
yeah,
You
yeah,
and I were notably, we were in the Chicago suburbs, the opposite.
I was in a Guggenheim.
Like,
Yeah.
so that's I feel like that's a huge part of this, and then, I think she was taken by surprise, and I think that's, like, more than any discourse we could have about privilege right now, that's what is probably the most important part of that early blowback is people are like, "Holy shit, it can't be that she's unashamed of how she looks. That would really suck."
Interestingly, like, I found the writing about the body was, like, my favorite parts of Adult Braces, like, Lindy reckoning with her
Yes.
brand as a fat positive activist and the mixed feelings that came along with
Yes.
that and feeling like she was trapped by having to look a certain way in order to continue to be an icon to her fans. And then
Yes.
I was really moved in the way like, Lena, her body changes over the course of the book, and if you've seen photos of her recently, she does look different than she did on Girls, and
Yeah.
there's, like, many lines she uses the word emaciated so many times, like, to describe her what's happening to her body as she's going through these, like, medical crises, and there is this kind of wistful sadness, um, even though she was never like, she did never look like Allison Williams, like, she was never gonna look like that, she has a
Sure.
but there is this kind of sadness for looking back at the woman at the body she used to have, at the woman she used to
Mm.
be, and reckoning with who she is now, that I almost wish she would have explored more.
Mm.
It's just kind of sprinkled on the page, but obviously this is it seems, I guess, the person who wrote this memoir seems more, in conflict over the size of her body than the younger Lena Dunham.
Ooh, okay. Oh, interesting. Um, yeah, I have noticed that too, because as a Dunham super fan at this point, right? It's hard not to if you read my Substack, you know that I love Lena Dunham's work. Yeah, I visited her. I don't even have Instagram anymore. I visited on a burner, and she'll be posting, I think, through the assistant who does her posting about like comparing and despairing, about previous incarnations. And Lee, it's really what you're saying is really interesting to me because I almost want to now fold in the conversation about the addiction narrative piece.
Mhm, mhm,
You and I have talked about this. At least I've spoken about Famesick and everyone I think who's read it knows that this is an addiction memoir.
mhm.
But you and I have spoken about Lindy West's Adult Braces as an unacknowledged addiction memoir, and you unpack that beautifully in your essay. But I really want to get into how the body works there because the book I'm working on, which is not it's not autofictional. It's got a lot of my personal experience in it, but it talks about something of what you're describing, right? Like feeling this sense of disembodiment through the entire experience of girlhood and womanhood, like being like, okay, gotta get thin.
Mhm,
And then moving on in time and being like, oh, I was punished myself. Look how thin I was. I was so
mhm,
good and thin then, and look how I'm so gross now. And to me, looking at the long, 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 long arc of the journey of the like self-optimization journey that I've undertaken where I've even like tried to transition genders, detransition, all this jazz, right?
mhm.
Um, you look at me now, you look at me when I was 19, you could easily compare and despair. But I think that's not I think what you're kind of gesturing towards, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you're gesturing towards here is there is that's gonna go on forever. It's worth unpacking that feeling because that sense of, "Oh my god, I look better then, and why didn't I just go easy on myself? I look better then, why didn't I just go easy on myself?" That's gonna continue ad infinitum until you acknowledge the disembodiment brought about by the addiction, right? Brought about by, "Hey, I could just ameliorate my circumstances through, you name it, this man who loves me, this Xanax pill," right? Like this career arc or like this fad diet. You're always lurching towards the future, and when you arrive in the future, you're looking back at the past with a whole lot of sorrow. And I think this is why Fame Sick to me is with a way superior book to Adult Braces
Yeah.
because she's in full acknowledgement of that, even if
Yeah,
she
and
doesn't unpack it.
it's not even that I think she's writing about her former body, like, I wish I had that body now. Like, with the way she uses the word emaciated so many times, I don't think that's complimentary. Like, I think she's saying, like,
No.
"I was so sick and thin, why didn't more people care about me, or why didn't more people, sympathize?"
Yes.
It's just that I wanted even more of her writing about her body changing and how she feels about that.
Sure.
Like, I just wanted more.
Totally. I mean, someone people are bringing this up here too. Her grandmother described her as, or she describes her grandmother as a live free or die anorexic.
Yeah.
So like there is a family history, right, of grappling with embodiment in the way I don't know a woman who hasn't. But yeah, I mean, her body changed profoundly, intensely, and you're right. She doesn't wrestle with it. I mean, in a way that maybe some of us would have liked to have seen. I hypothesize that addiction played a role in that. I
Mhm.
hypothesize that from my personal experience, addiction and the kind of addiction she was going through, you are disembodied,
Mhm.
and not in like a I don't care way, but in like a truly existentially destabilizing way, and that
Yeah.
could be part of it.
So a couple weeks ago, the Cut Book Gossip newsletter published sales data for adult braces, which people were very curious to know how that book was selling because everyone was talking about this book. And they said week one, it sold 1,800 copies. And this is book scan data. So this comes with a caveat that that doesn't include audiobook or ebook. So it's definitely more than that. But hardcover, 1,800 copies week one. Um, Yesterday on Instagram, you're not on Instagram. You might not know this. I might be telling you for the first time, but there was a video on
No,
Instagram of
what
Lena
I
at dinner answering the phone from her agent and editor. They tell her that she's debuting at number one on the New York Times bestseller list and that it sold 60,000
60,000
copies.
copies. Yes,
Okay.
I heard that.
I posted this on the internet, and the response I got was like, "How can you compare Lena and Lindy?" It's like, okay, I admit that Lena Dunham is much more famous than Lindy West. However, what I think is interesting is how could everyone be talking about adult braces, but
Right.
it sells so few copies, and now everyone's talking about this book by a woman who is much hated, and she sold 60,000. So what's
Yes.
your take on the disparity? Why do you think this memoir is doing so well? Why do you think adult braces is doing so poorly?
It's a fantastic question, such a fantastic question, and I think, Lee, to understand it, we have to know a little bit about the background of Lindy, whom you brought up earlier, and who you're right, like, the whole internet, when her book came out, was like, "Why are we all talking about her?" Some of us know her, and some of us really have no idea who this is, but the discourse is introducing, me to her, I Lindy West is someone it actually came up through a pretty traditional kind of, um legacy into digital media, journalistic, like, network. Like, she started writing for, I think it was The Stranger, a Seattle alt weekly, where she really made a name, and, like, Dan Savage was like, "You're super cool," kind of being lifted up in that way. When she made the jump to Jezebel, right, like, her, colleague, Gia Tolentino, she was able to kind of, leverage the virality that was happening with a lot of what she written into a bona fide online presence. And so you see someone like I think Lindy and Gia, although they went separate, very I would argue very different directions, but they are both women who are able to kind of leverage an early kind of digital media slash social media notoriety into these very large careers. Lindy had a TV show too called Shrill, which was based on her memoir of the same name. And some people got to know her through that, though obviously Shrill was not the watershed creative accomplishment that I think Girls was. Um, why did Lena sell better than Lindy, right? I mean, yeah, if we dispense of the fact, we can't dispense of the fact that Lena is known better than Lindy, right? So there is a disparity in who
Yes.
knows who. More people know Lena, and you point this out, I think, so so smartly that Lena was hated in the 2010s. Lindy's exact heyday, right? And
Yeah.
Lena was also having a heyday, right? But she was appearing on the cover of Vogue, and people were like, "You should go kill yourself." Like, there was such intense animus towards Lena Dunham, whereas
Oh my god, there's
Lindy.
such a horrible scene in this book where she's gonna be on the cover of Vogue and she breaks out in a rash on her face that they say can't be
Yes.
covered in makeup, and then she appears on the cover of Vogue, and then Jezebel puts out a bounty for the
I
unretouched photos.
I was on Twitter that very day.
You were like, "I remember.
I was like, I'm sure I was just some
This was your
20
Pearl
something who was like,
Harbor."
"Let's get those photos." This is my it was my Pearl Harbor. It was very much not my 9/11. We'll talk about Hassan Piker later. Anyway, the like, yeah, like this I totally remember that, right? And I think what I want to point out here is Lindy West. It's like Lindy West. I'm not saying accusing Lindy West of being anti-Lena or whatever, but I think Lindy West would be someone more likely to be in the media scrum, in the commentariat, in the kind of like, let me introduce a privilege discourse idea and get like 24,000 retweets than in the public eye, like, receiving that commentary. And so Lindy, it's these two very different types of celebrity. I think they both are celebrities, but Lindy is a micro celebrity,
Mhm.
and Lena had way more kind of legacy backing at that point in time. And so, if we're talking about, for instance, like these, like the millennial leftist kind of commentary, right? We're talking
Yep.
about who are the popular millennial writers. We're talking about Sally. We're talking about Gia. These are individuals who get to sort of straddle. Micro celebrity allows you to straddle these legacy spaces and these kind of upstart DIY online spaces, which are hardly upstart at this point, right? But in the 2010s, you could be both a friend of the people
Mhm.
and a critic of power,
Mhm.
and amassing a certain amount of celebrity or even whatever power yourself, which I'm not using that like in a negative way. I'm just saying micro celebrity works in an interesting manner like that.
Yeah, and I think what you're bringing up is, like, such a important part of media history that I think about all the time, but I might be the only weirdo that thinks about this because, again, we don't have enough hindsight and distance, but it's like Gen Xers were in legacy media, right? Like, they had their footholds. They weren't giving up those jobs. They were at the New York Times,
Right.
they were at the New Yorker. Our
Yep.
generation in our early 20s, we could start writing freelancing for sites like XOJane. We could kind of break in the 2010s. I had
Shout
an
out.
article go viral on
Yes.
BuzzFeed that helped me sell a memoir. So in the
Yes.
2010s, Edith Zimmerman started the hairpin. We had the
Yes.
toast. We had Jezebel. Um, so the millennials came in and we were like, we don't need the old people. Like, we don't need you
Right.
guys. We know what websites are. We are going to like colonize digital media. Like, this is our space. Like, this is
Yes.
where Lindy West rose. This is where Gia Tolentino rose. So, like, our generation of critics started on these digital websites. And what's happening today is that we are becoming the middle-aged people. And I get told every day, oh my God, please don't tell me I have to get on TikTok. But the same thing is happening. The younger generation has found if they're savvy and they get on TikTok, they can make careers there. And so now
Yes.
we are the middle-aged people kind of like looking for a lifeboat saying like, but what if I don't want to get on TikTok? Like, what's going to happen to my career? So
Right.
I find this really interesting, but definitely I just think I'm still thinking out loud since I posted that thing to Substack Notes about who are the millennial writers. But I think we can think about the creatives. So, like, who's creating creative art? Lena Dunham made a TV show. Sally Rooney writes novels. And then who are the millennial critics that are responding to the art? And so that's Gia Tolentino. That's Lindy
Yeah.
West. So in
Right.
tandem, these forces are shaping the culture. And the critics are saying, you can't do that, right? If they're left-wing scolds that are judging the art based on how much it's advancing social justice politics, which was a framework of cultural criticism in the 2010s.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Well, you actually have, Lena is such a kind of a like, she is such a crucial figure for understanding this, because here you have someone who has in the 2010s legacy backing, but also access to understanding of participation in the social justice inclined millennial leftist commentariat. So
Mhm.
you have someone who's like, I'm going to go make a multi-million dollar TV show that is feeding tons of families. And I feel like shit because someone, posted on Tumblr about how I'm a white supremacist, and and like I got to get Donald Glover in here to play this role, and so
Oh, yeah, Donald
there's
Glover.
right, you
Yeah.
have this kind of, y- you know it's so interesting because you have that sort of feedback loop that would not have exist with Gen X. And I want to talk a bit about Gen X for a moment here, because I remember feeling so utterly out of step with some of the kind of like, it almost felt like like their countercultural values, right? Being afraid of selling out. I was like, girl, let me sell the hell. How can I get people looking at my books? Can you help me sell out? How can I sell out? And of course, there's that great scene in Nathan Hill's Wellness, right? Where the father is looking at the son and being like, "Why do you want all these like brand endorsements for playing your video games online?" And the son's like, "It means you're good, Dad. It means you're good at it." And of course, right? This is a set of values. I'm not even getting into the kind of hollowing out of punk rock, but this is a set of values that at the end of the day, I do sympathize with and identify with. Like, I don't want to like be a corporate shill, right? I don't want to like make media that is actually hollow on the inside, devoid of feeling, of course. And so I do understand those feelings, but I think that
But
you
Lena's the
had
dream because she sold out
Lena's
to
the
her own heart.
dream.
That's the
She
dream.
sold yeah, see, great point. She sold out to make her own art. I'm putting this in quotes because she had a proximity to this high rolling art world where I could be Marina Abramovich. I actually have a ton of her. I love Marina Abramovich.
I love
I
Linda Lavitch too.
love her. You could be Marina Abramovich. You could be like, look, I'm gonna be naked in here, with like a pen, like a satanic symbols drawn on my boobs, and there's fire all around me. You're gonna pay me $2 million for this. It's. I think the art world is a great proxy for understanding how Lena's life functioned that way. But to go back to the Gen X piece, what felt hypocritical was you had people not wanting to sell out and then quickly staffing the entire New Yorker, the New York Times, all these legacy outlets clinging to those jobs, clinging to the tenure track jobs, yada yada yada. And millennials were like, well, okay, we know about Angel Fire. Let's go make a website. But I think then this is where our anxiety comes up. And maybe I would include myself in this group a few years ago, but I've had a bit of a like sea change in my mind around this. I think the millennial anxiety is, oh shit, do we look like those people now? How can we espouse these values that really, emphasize the scarcity we've lived through, the post 2008 economic collapse? I really do want to loot a Gucci. I think it's good to loot a Gucci. And I have my thoughts on that. It's like throwing, bad money after bad. But like the point is, this is the anxiety, and this is what Lena's trying to quell circa 2014 by being like, I'm the one who got it. I'm the one who has all this shit. I need to be endlessly generous. I need to be so kind to everyone because man, I could become a punching bag.
I want to read one sentence from the book and then I want to talk about microlooting. I love this is one of the lines I lost. Or, one of the lines I loved. Some actors joke that they work for free and what they're really paid for is the press. I'd say that I worked for free every second, and what I was paid for was everything I lost by doing that. God, she's so good.
She is so good. She is so good. Like, I don't know if you revisit Not That Kind of Girl, but it's so beautiful to see how much her voice matured.
Oh, I never read
I
that.
grew up. I read it in a fit of envy
I'm
when I
sure.
was like 23. Yeah. But it's so wonderful to see, um, man, you mentioned it just took 7 years to write. It's really wonderful to see how she let these ideas marinate,
Yeah.
didn't she? Yeah.
Okay, well
Go ahead.
let's
Yeah.
let's pivot to micro looting. So this brings us to one of the five famous millennials that we haven't already discussed, Gia Tolentino,
Gia.
who is a staff writer at the New Yorker. I love her writing. I loved Trick Mirror. I think she's a phenomenal writer. I also recently loved her review of Elizabeth Gilbert.
That was a very good I was surprised. I was really like that review. Yeah.
So, she she has recently appeared in this new video series, which I'm fascinated in on multiple levels. The New York Times, even as everyone insists to me that TikTok is irrelevant, why do we have to talk about TikTok so much? The New York Times looks at TikTok for what is trendy and interesting, and then they make content around it. So the most recent piece of content is around a TikTok trend of people bragging of stealing things, and they brought not just Spiegelman, who I know because I worked for her parents. She works at the opinion desk of the Times, and she what moderated a conversation between Hassan Piker and Gia Tolentino.
She sure did. Yeah. And which I'm glad you're bringing this up, Lee, because to clarify, I also really I think Gia Taltu is a fantastic writer. And I have also worked with Nadja Spiegelman. Shout out to her father. Love those comics, love Mouse. But she worked at the Paris Review. She's really
Oh
lovely to
yeah,
work
yeah.
with. Yeah. And so this is, by the way, there's no ad feminam or ad hominem coming from me. This is more this is more just kind of like an interesting sense of bemusement around some of this stuff that I think ties into Lindy's memoir, which we'll get into after that. But yeah, they're talking about this trend of microlooting, right? And they're talking about like stealing from Whole Foods as protest,
Because Whole Foods is
form
owned
of
by
micro
Amazon,
because it's
which is
owned by
evil.
Amazon, Jeff Bezos. Yeah, exactly. And you know, I'll out myself again. I actually have done this. I did this probably just a year after I was really angry at Lena Dunham. I was having a wild time, my own addiction memoir to come, right? And I thought, what would be cool? This Whole Foods isn't really well monitored. I'm just like, whatever, some broke kid. I'll go steal just a ton of food from this Whole Foods. And I'm going to bring it I was doing some freelance journalism work and I knew this homeless community, unhoused community living under a bridge in just downtown Chicago. And I was like, I'll bring it to these folks. I'm going to go see them tomorrow. It was an idea made under like a set of really weird kind of mental circumstances, and I was caught and I was arrested. Yeah, I didn't like spend the night in jail Thoreau style, but there was some of that energy to it. A very nice officer was a very nice officer. Sorry, Hassan, but the dude was trying to be nice, and he was like, "I'm going to read to you from the Constitution while you're handcuffed here in a nice way." It's like a bedtime story. It was so weird.
Wait, it wasn't your Miranda rights? It was reading to you from the Constitution?
No, because I was already detained, so I was in a. I was handcuffed in a space, and he was like, "You're really weird. I'm just gonna, but you seem troubled, and I'm gonna read to you from this." And it was the CPD, so I
In
did
novel.
witness some rough behavior from them. Is this going in my novel? No, this
Please.
wasn't a one-off essay. Um,
It'll be a
but
spin-off novella for me. Shoplifting. Do you remember the Tao Lin book, Shoplifting from American
I
Apparel?
my God. Another millennial yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do, but anyway, the micro looting piece, it's so interesting because you see Gia especially kind of holding this very reasonable adjacent line of like, like, yeah, stealing from Whole Foods, I mean, is it a meaningful act of protest? Not really. What's really meaningful is going and getting 17.95 an hour and unionizing you with your colleagues and this and that. And you see Hassan Piker across from her being like, the really bad thing is when like corporations extract surplus labor value. And I think Zoran Mamdani is bomb and he's going to do woke Sharia. He doesn't say this in that interview, but he said it on his streams. He's going to do woke Sharia in New York. Like it's interesting because he will, for those of you who don't know Hassan Piker, he's a Twitch streamer who's very much in that world of like the kind of like dirtbag streamer bro,
He's
like,
like a left-wing provocateur.
he's a left wing provocateur. He has that kind of like energy, but he also goes on these kind of established legacy. He'll be in those spaces too. And I saw in this conversation between him and Gia, a conversation that I think unfolds in adult braces, where you have the dude kind of just pushing the envelope and like saying some shit, being a bit more blunt, and the woman in the conversation kind of reshaping it, couching it, accepting the thesis and then reconstructing it, I think, for a more like in maybe a tamer or more socially acceptable way. Notably, if you go through that entire interview, there's an end part where Gia's like, and there's all kinds of stuff I do that's just immoral every day. Like I get iced coffee in a plastic cup, and I mean, that is so for the collective, that is so deleterious for like our mutual benefit. Like I just do horrible things, and Nadja Spiegelman is like, I order Grubhub in the rain, and I'm a piece of garbage for that too. And so there's this. They do the kind of no ethical consumption under capitalism piety thing,
Yeah.
while Hassan Piker just sits there.
That's a fascinating interpretation. That's so
Yeah.
interesting.
And you had such a great interpretation of that kind of discourse happening in adult braces is when Lindy West's husband frames monogamy as an act of possession, of racism,
Of slavery.
of slavery. Yes, so that's right. My God, of slavery.
Of slavery, and of course, Lindy couldn't understand that as a white woman, a point
As
that
a
she concedes to him.
right, right. I'm so curious, Lee, how you like. I'm sure everyone on this stream has read your essay. But I'm wondering how you were like arrived at that place, right? Of like analyzing that relationship between Lindy and her husband as there's like some kind of like ideological maybe extremism happening here in the name of love addiction.
Oh, what a good question. Well, I'm imagining that we have a bunch of writers in the room watching the stream. It's like step one of writing that essay was like feeling so uncomfortable reading that book and then thinking, why am I so uncomfortable? Like, why does this make like, it made me physically uncomfortable to read that book. And that's when I realized, like, oh my God, it's because I've been in this relationship. Like, it was very familiar
Right.
to me, it was, like very triggering. Um, so that's where it started. And then just thinking about it. And here's where we can compare and contrast her to Lena, too. Lindy does not reckon with any of her formerly held beliefs from 2010's feminism because she
Right.
continues to hold those beliefs. Like, in fact, they only become more extreme. She doubles down on them and she seems to see the whole world, including all the other strangers she meets on her road trip. She quickly sorts everyone into ally or enemy, based on,
Yes.
appearance, class. They must either be for or against her and her Black husband.
What's on your baseball cap?
Yeah.
You're an 11-year-old boy wearing that was I was like, "Come on." Yeah, the
Yeah,
kid in
she
the
turns
road
on
trip.
a child. She plays catch with a child and then turns on him when she realizes what's on his baseball hat. A child.
It's like, "Come on."
Totally nuts.
Yeah.
So she's still in a rigid belief system, also something I can relate to, also something I experienced in my binder cut days. Like, I remember that. So I remember being
Uh,
trapped by ideas. I remember being trapped by a romantic relationship. And yeah, that was the essay. But what did you think of like Lena's writing about her campaigning for Hillary with 2016 feminism? At
oh,
one point, she
man.
said that Jenny Connor, her writing partner, made her a Frankenstein feminist. It feels like she's like assembled by from parts.
Yeah,
Um, but she was definitely
that's
like in
different.
the 2010s. I would have put them on the same panel at my conference. Like, they both could have appeared on the same feminist panel with Roxanne Gay
Absolutely.
sitting in a row. Like, they all could have been the same. Um, but Lena, I don't know that I feel her avoiding getting into telling us how her ideology has changed if it had. I have a feeling it's changed and she doesn't want to talk about it. What do you think? There's
Oh,
one
man,
book
this is such a
specifically
good question.
refers to her as a centrist.
Yeah, well, listen, having been trans and now I'm not trans, I liberal and centrist are some of the dirtiest words you can call someone on the left. And I know that from experience. But I want to, man, so there's so many good things in what you just said. And in answering your question, Lee, I really want to point out this kind of the really common critique that we see bubbling up of like the second Trump administration from the millennial left of center commentariat. And I'm talking Gia, but I'm also talking like Carol Burke, whose book Yesteryear is a Good Morning America pick. Um, it's that this incarnation of MAGA conservatism has no ideology. There is no ideology here. It's just this sort of like craven impulsivity. It's just sort of like it's all about power and sex and like I want to screw over the proletariat because I can. And it's really bad. The implication is it's really bad that there's no ideology.
Mhm.
There's no framework of belief. And in some ways I understand where that criticism is coming from, but in other ways I recognize how limiting just what you're saying an ideology can be, and I've lived through, as you have, the strictures of an
Yeah.
ideology.
Yeah.
And I've lived through what I was like, this when I kind of emerged from really strict leftist only spaces into spaces that had, like left heterodox or like where a lot of different people, a lot of different beliefs were circulating through those spaces.
Mhm.
I was like, it felt like behavioral authoritarianism. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle it's coming from, but it could feel like behavioral authoritarianism where you're
Yeah.
just like, holy shit, like I am such a bad person because I accidentally wore a shirt with a native pattern on it. And I'm going to hell. I'm racist. Like you could see almost like a Christianizing of this thought, like a moralization that's happening about these kinds of political principles, which is interesting. But to go back to your question about Alina and her politics, Lena is this is my major kind of critique of fame sick, if you could call that. And then this is I'll say it here because I didn't really put it super explicitly in the essay, but Lena is disabled and chronically ill. Lena has a trans sibling, a brother, Cyrus.
Mhm.
Um, both of these individuals like this are having experiences related to their embodiment and optimization and modification of their embodiment as a result of social experiences.
Mm.
Okay, which is not I'm not saying like was not experiencing endometriosis, like genuine like medical emergencies throughout, but she says herself that this is the sick and fame sick, right? This stuff was brought about by and worsened by
Mhm.
the position she was in, the feedback she was getting, the ringer she put herself through, and that her co-executive producer and others working with her were putting her through. And so you have this push and pull, Lee, where it's like it's maybe it's hard to like look in the mirror and be like, oh my God, I feel weird about my body now versus then. It's even harder to look in the mirror and be like, what ideologies have I absorbed about my body?
Mm.
And its wrongness or its rightness and its need for modification or optimization? That's the tough question. Lena Dunham's politics right now, I could tell you right now, it's gonna be like what the left is like what like the most like trans aligned left, right? Because she
Mhm.
cares deeply about her sibling and she's
Yeah.
a family person.
Yeah.
And so this is not me trying to demonize anyone's politics. This is just saying, like, I have been in a lot of trans spaces. I know like what was believed and what was believed about human rights broadly. These are very optimistic beliefs. And also how people were like in conservative spaces, right? Or in, liberal, you name the space, any ideologically intense space, how people were kept in line.
Mhm.
Right. So there was a sense of optimism and a sense of pessimism. And I think that Lena's politics blow in the wind with that because she got some feedback that she can't just be Marina Abramovich. She can't just like do her thing and be really, I know it sounds corny, but be herself. She's got to fall the hell in line. And those are the politics she probably has right now. So, yes, she's embarrassed of Hillary. She would be pro Bernie. And I think that, I'll ask you this. I think that when we're talking about like someone like Adam Driver, right? Lena made this statement about how, you know, that was something she put on the screen because it was something she was living through. This sort of like, oh, I'm like a beefy guy. I'm kind
Oh,
of
the
brutish
character
and I
he
like
got, the guy that
smacking on the ass.
inspired him.
Yes, and Adam Driver's playing the guy, exactly. And she made a statement about being like, I think a lot of women were like, "Oh, now, like, I want a guy who, like, does carpentry and spanks me and stuff." And I wasn't trying to do, like, a positive portrayal of that type of that desire was actually complicated, and maybe it's also bad. And, of course, you had the blowback of women being like, "Are you just a hetero pessimist?" Like, there was that. But you had this really, really great essay where you talked about loving Heathcliff and how that was sort of like
Oh,
tied into, yeah, how you felt about this ex who was the very same ex that we meet in the Bluebeard's Castle essay.
yeah.
And I feel like we're kind of up against a wall here where like it's like what is the male behavior that is okay? The discourse about that rages. I'm wondering how like in Famesick, how you saw that coming up for you, like the
Oh, yeah.
heterosexuality of it all. Which, by the way, I'm
Are you putting
so
me on the spot as a token straight woman, Raph?
no, 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 no. I am at least a little bisexual. My wife and I were talking about this last night. I was like, I'd be a sister wife if I saw him once every 160 days.
Okay, do we think that Adam on Girls is a Heathcliff? I think he is a Heathcliff.
Yes.
Yeah, he's my type.
Yeah. Okay, but now see, say more about that though, because I think that type gets moralized against, and that's the problem. Everyone's like, he's bad, but also we love him. This is the Hassan Piker appeal.
Oh God.
See,
Okay.
this is what I'm getting
So
into. Yeah.
okay, let's see how I want to answer this. Like, okay, let's say the appeal, there are many appeals toward my ex-boyfriend who I've now written about publicly many times. I've written a whole memoir about him. But it was like,
Great memoir.
thank you. What if I've been a good girl my whole life and this was my opportunity to find out what it would be like to be bad? It's like a kind of transgression. It's a kind of rebellion. It's a kind of living in extremity instead of following the
Yes.
rules. And to me, and I, was a young fan of Sylvia Plath. Like Sylvia Plath has influenced my life and my writing so much. And that's what she sees in Ted. He's a
Yes.
genius. He's so big and strong. He's with someone when she meets him. She bites his cheek, like the infamous meeting at the party story, this kind of reckless abandon, and to like love him so much that she would die when she loses him. It's just like, oh my God, like what a romance. And she meets him right after she watches Wuthering Heights and is looking for her Heathcliff. Like it's like you couldn't
Yup.
write fiction like this.
No.
So this is a certain archetype that I think is appealing to some women. I think some women can't understand this at all. They're like there are red flags everywhere, girl. Like, how did you miss the red flags? But to me, I was like, how those red flags look so exciting to me. Like a
Those are
Toreador with
green
the
flags.
bull. I was the bull. I was
Yeah.
like, I need to do that dance. I want to do that dance. And I don't regret that relationship. Like, who would I meet today if I didn't have that? So
Right.
I would do it again. It was exciting and terrible.
So here's my question, Lee. Do you think this is partly why Lena has won people back and sold 60,000 copies, whereas Lindy has kind of made enemies of her former fans because Lena is sincere about like I wanted that, whereas Lindy is couching it in this like pious political stance of like, oh well, I really should, yes, it is bad of me to be a white woman and refuse him this, when what she really wants is a tall dude who's hot and blunt and just is like, whatever, like, let's go. And, like it's the kind of, there's an attrition of heterosexual desire. Like, there's like, let's not be honest about it, or just desire purely. I'm not even trying to put straight. I think that distinction is silly, but yeah.
It's like reading Adult Braces. I didn't believe what she was saying.
Right.
And that's why I worry about her. And by the way, she has blocked me now on all social platforms. I never knew her. So like we were never following each other, but Lindy West has now blocked me.
Lindy West has blocked you.
But for some reason, some of you in this chat, maybe some people keep tagging me in Substack notes and tagging Lindy West too. Like, please stop, leave her alone. Like, I'm gonna say live her life, but it's very funny. But I believe Lena. Like, I just feel like Lena is reckoning honestly in retrospect with choices she made and things that she wanted that may have been bad for her.
Yeah.
Whereas Lindy is telling us, she's like, I'm so happy, you guys. Why do you think I'm not happy? And you're like, the
Right.
cover of your book is you crying. Like there's
Right.
too much cognitive dissonance. And that's why it's just, I don't think there's no escapism element to reading that memoir. It's just it's like watching your best friend go through some kind of bad relationship and you like want to remain friends, but you're like, girl, I don't know how to tell you this, but like, and that's not like, this is just, it's more than gossip. Like people think this sold because it's like celebrity memoir gossip. Like, yeah, there is some gossip in it, but it's just a pleasure to read.
Yes. A true pleasure. Totally. And, this is an interesting question too, right? Because like, it's not like lesbians aren't guilty of this, right? It's not like we haven't like watched the L Word and been like, Shane, I want like a lady
Oh, is
child.
there's a Heathcliff on Elwood.
Oh yeah, there's a Heath. I mean, I have this whole theory that like Mae Martin is kind of tapping into some of that right now too, of just like this like hot shag and just like I'm totally emotionally irresponsible. Let's do this. Like they're absolutely right. But I think that, when we're talking about this 2010s feminism, we're also talking about around being human. You know what I mean? It's like if I have a desire, is it a good or bad desire? What is the like ethical value? What's the utilitarian value? And does that if I'm Lindy West and I just want this husband because he's like so friggin' hot, and I feel that I'm a love addict and I feel that his adoration of me validates me.
Yeah.
Because even though I go online and I say like everyone, be okay with being fat, I am not okay with being fat, right? That was what I think was really stressful for a lot of us reading this memoir. I'm like, no, like
Mm.
you were supposed to be body positive. And, it's okay though, right? I'm not admitting to any of these sort of like base, like counter feminist desires. I'm actually politically pious and doing the right thing because you know what? It's progressive, like polyamory, and it's progressive, like not holding down this man of color because that would be like possessing him.
Right. It's like
And
Lindy made like a chart and like it's like on one side it's like conservatism and the other side is progressivism
yes,
and it's like monogamy, conservative.
yes,
So
yes.
can't be that kind of person.
I can't be that kind of person. And this is, I think, when it comes back, I'm like obsessed with this Hassan Piker stuff because, I'm listening to Carol Burke's podcast that she does, the Yesteryear author that she does about, they're talking about like who's so afraid of Hassan Piker. And one of the very first sentences is this guy's described as a zaddy, right? And like I read the GQ profile. I know how the dude's house looks. Okay, I know what his stack is. I know how much creatine he takes. But the
And he
thing
drives
is,
a Benz.
he drives a Benz, and he's a hot, tall, muscle man, and he'll do carpentry and slap you on the ass, right? But the thing is, Lee, he also has really, really good politics. You see, he has the right liking him is actually really meritorious. I'm taking a stance against the like extractive billionaires. I love Hassan Piker and I want him to slap me on the ass. And I think slapping it when he slaps me on the ass, it's like revolutionary.
That's what actually brings about the revolution. It's like
That's
a number of slap on the ass.
what
No, but
that's
it's
what that's
also
what brings
just
about
like
the yeah.
just the fact that it's the New York Times. I mean, the New York Times, like writing about Marxism and socialism with like the and bringing Gia and who's a staff writer for the New Yorker, the most prestigious magazine in America, and Hassan, who's a millionaire from being a creator, like to have a conversation about Marxism. It's just like
It's
that's so like and
so
like if it appears in the print, it's going to be next to like a Van Cleef Jewel ad. It's just
right.
like it's the New Yorker audience. It's like how do we package this for like the 1%? What does the 1% think about Marxism? Like they would love a story about people who steal lemons from Whole Foods. Like they would love a story about a New Yorker staff writer who stole 4 lemons from Whole Foods.
See, now I'm like Adam Driver circa 2014, and I'm like being like, "What about me? My dad manages a Kinko's. All right, I'm I'm
Our
also a
diet
hippo
Nepo
baby."
baby.
I'm like, "What about me? I stole a bunch of Dave's flaxseed bread in 2015. What about me, Gia?" But but like, yeah, there's totally the champagne socialism of it all, but I think there's also, and I'm gonna go back to this very millennial tendency to politicize desire to make it more acceptable, right? So it's like, you know, it's not that I want Hassan Piker, the leftist zaddy, to slap me on the ass. It's that I really object to US imperialism. And I've gone on a journey of discovering things. And that journey involved reading at least 2 chapters of Capital. I didn't get to the workday, but I know a thing or two about cloth shirts. It's like, I'm the nerd sitting over here being like, dude, it is just like you take the God out of Christianity and you have Hegel. You take the Geist out of Hegel, you have Marx. So this is, this we are doing a very highly moralized good, bad, am I right, am I wrong framework. And as usual, we have women sitting there weeping on podcasts, being like, here's how I've been bad, save me. And you have the men being like, yeah, you've been real bad. That's the Lindy West story, though,
Yeah.
in part at least. I'm not saying I know her, I know, but I could feel like there's the discourse around Lindy West was a lot of women being like, "We are so fed up with this aspect of, like, being on the left," right? It's feeling like we're on the right, basically. We feel just as controlled in a sense.
What I would like to see, it's not like I would like to see more of any certain type of politics. I would like to see, like, more dignity
Yeah.
because my, like,
Yes.
worst nightmare as, like, a childless woman in my early 40s is that, like, anyone would think of me as a baby forever. Like, I so wanna be seen as an adult. I wanna be seen as independent, responsible. I wanna be seen as, like, someone who,
Mm,
like, has enough capacity to help others.
yeah.
And, like, even the little girl tights on this cover, the braces on the
It's a
cover of
great
Lindy's
question.
memoir,
Oh,
just like the adult baby, like, there's a moment in here where oh, it's so dramatic. The Jenny Connor narrative arc is my favorite of this book, and there's a very dramatic moment where Jenny's like, "You better negotiate with HBO to get me the same deal that they're giving you because I would work just as much money." And Lena's spiraling, and she tells us and I would be spiraling too. She's spiraling, and then she says, like, "I didn't ask any of the adults like Judd Apatow what to do." But by this point, she's, like, in her late 20s, early 30s, and I just wanna be like, "Girl, you are an adult at this point." Like, at some point, you have to be like you have to look around and be like, "It's me.
it's me.
I'm the adult." And I think,
Yeah.
um even with the even with the Gia interview, like, I look around at my peers sometimes, and I'm just like, I feel like we're still stuck in this, like, "2008, we graduated into a recession, we're just little babies," mindset.
I know, I agree, yeah.
Time to be like, "We are the adults in the room. We are role models to the younger generation." You know what I mean? And
Yes.
how are we behaving, and what values are we espousing, and what are we writing? It's time to be grown-ups.
Yeah, oh, man, this is such a great point. I see someone here writing her parents infantilize her, and I do agree. Um, I think that there the yeah, we graduated into a recession. We have a vague notion of, like, what collective bargaining might means, but we know a little bit more about, like, how to post on Zanga kind of energy is, everyone, like, popular accusations leveled at millennials of doing a victim forward, like, politics, right? And
Yeah.
and I agree with you. It's not like if I try to, like, pin this to conservatism, or I could pin this to leftism, it's not even worth doing because there you see this in the alt everything on both sides. Um, what is it about, like, identifying this feeling of helplessness and you writing that towards empowerment? That's my thing with, like, man, that's how I sometimes feel about naming an aspect of my identity and then, community building based on that, right? Where this is kind of like a 2010s thing, but if I'm Lena and I'm saying, okay, I'm chronically and I'm disabled in these ways, I understand where she's like wanting to write about this and consume these stories. But I know from experience that when you get funneled into the activism of it,
Mhm, mhm,
and this is a Tolentino Piker conversation too, it starts being the case that you are only coming up short and you have to, and there's only scarcity.
mhm,
There's so little, right? And there's everyone to please that you kind of enter into this weird, really inefficacious, like, echo chamber.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, so, like, if we go back to Lena, you actually do, um, I'll just Dr. Phil it here a bit, but you do have a lot of codependency in her family, which, sorry, mom and dad, but I don't relate to that in in some capacities of, like, wow, we're really in close quarters here, and we're really kind of not, maybe setting some boundaries that would allow us to function as adults. Like, Leanne talks about, she's sleeping with a guy in the room right next to her parents' bedroom. The dude's winding up, in her parents' apartment, like, naked with all these beer bottles. Lena gets a third-degree burn in wherever, in the UK or
London
Scotland, in London, and there
or
are
Wales.
hospitals in London
But dad
and
flies
Wales.
there. Dad flies there to take her back to LA.
her back to LA, which is, I'm like, Carol, my good man, that's gonna make things worse.
Yeah.
Why are you flying a burn patient on a transatlantic flight? So I think that's a really, really great point though, too, right? Like you have the like screw the establishment energy, and then you also have the like extremely like, what are the pieties? What are the rules to follow? How can I be good? How can I get the A's energy colliding in some really weird ways. Yeah.
Maybe we should end by me asking you, putting you on the spot, who would you which millennial writers do you think we'll remember in 10 years? Who would you put on your list of kind of era defining millennial writers? Who do you think has influenced the culture and that'll still be relevant? We'll still be
It'll
talking
still
about
be
them
coming back.
10 years from now.
Man. Oh, it's a great question. Um, I think that I think uh, I think this is a tricky one, right? Because I think that there are folks like Lindy. One big critique of adult braces was that she seems to be stuck in the 2010s, right? And I think that there are some individuals who are really going to get caught in the undertow of beliefs maxing,
Yeah.
of really sticking to your ideology, and your ideology is outdated. I do think Gia runs the risk of that, though. She has a lot of influence, and I think that there are a lot of individuals, like Andrea Lum Chu, who I've made my
Yep.
feelings known about her criticism, but who are really getting pulled back and might not be known as broadly unless they can chameleonize themselves well enough. I think that, truth be told, like I think that a lot of the millennial writers, there there's going to be a kind of dare I say, a nuance maxing. That's the opposite of nuance. There's going to be like a new like an affinity for nuance, and a kind of a vanguard that emerges around that. And
That
I
would be
think
good news for us, Raf.
it would be good news for us. So maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I think that like, you know, gosh, you see writers like Leah Sottile, who I just interviewed for my whatever podcast
What a
thing.
great
She,
cover.
yeah, this is actually about the Love Has One cult. She is writing about like, belief extremism, and doing really great journalism about that in really interesting ways. You see, I mean, like a lot of people I'm going to name, I feel like people don't know about yet, but they're kind of come on the come up. There's this book called Black Bag that I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about. That's out of the UK. There's I think we're probably going to see like writers like oh God, Lee, I have to get back to you on this because
Okay, you'll chime in on the Substack thread when
I'm
you
looking on the Substack thread
your
because
five
it's like,
millennials.
yeah, I can't. I mean, what I want to say more broadly is I think there's going to be a shift. Here's what I want to say. I think that we all did this like 2010s internet populism, and a lot of people got really famous from that who didn't go Lena's route of ultra success. So I think that you have people who have like a lot of micro celebrity in the literary world. Um, I know Tony Tulatumuli's name comes up a lot. He's not in that group, but he's someone who has, I think, leveraged some of that into some immensely readable, like really smart criticisms of the very same thing. He has some notoriety, and he's also talking about the Hall of Mirrors that notoriety produces. But I don't think we've met that vanguard yet. I don't think we've met the vanguard in the way we want to meet them. I think life is long. And I know that we could say like Sally Rooney, Patricia Lockwood, and Helen Peterson. Um, Actually, Tao Lin is a good example because Tao Lin is going through, maybe some have not witnessed his transformation, but Tao Lin is someone who's looking back on the younger Tao Lin in his essays in a really, really interesting way. So the vanguard that we're going to meet is maybe less the chameleon vanguard and more the like life is long, my beliefs have changed, or maybe
Mhm.
a belief framework isn't the most important thing you can have because the human experience doesn't boil down to an ideology. That's who we're going to meet. That's my prediction. I don't know.
So maybe, yes, anding what you've said, what we're going to see in the coming 10 years are more writers bravely saying, I changed my mind about something,
I think so. Yeah. Can you think of it, folks who've been saying some of that?
who've changed their minds.
Yeah, who've been open about having mind changing.
Ralph Frumpkin comes to mind.
Lee Stein. Lee Stein really notably comes to mind, frankly.
Um,
Yeah, people
yeah,
in there.
it's
There are a
hard.
lot of people.
This is exactly the Lindy West problem. How can
I
she
know.
change her body if this is her brand? How can you change your beliefs if your beliefs are your brand?
I know. Listen. When it comes back down to embodiment, if you have changed your gender, I'm saying this from experience. Whatever you want to call it. I'm going to say for me, cosmetically, the gender change. If you have sunk the time into the testosterone and the double mastectomy or top surgery, you've done all this jazz, it's that much harder, right? Like to your beliefs are linked up with your body. As
Mhm,
I saw this really great essay in the New York Times about like how Ozempic changes marriages. If you're in a different body,
mhm,
as a result of, notably, as a result of a belief system, I'm a big believer in queer theory and a certain postmodern concepts of the self. Someone else might be a big believer in like, hey, like if I lose all this weight, my life is going to change in these ways. But then the couple profiled in this article hadn't had sex in like 5 years
mhm,
or 2 years. Like so the marriage was really being disrupted by the woman's weight loss
mhm,
in it's a whole variety of interesting reasons, but that is the question, and you raise it, I think, so smartly because Lindy West made a career off of not just I'm a feminist, I'm a fat feminist.
mhm,
I was fat as hell for my whole wedding, and it was still my dream wedding, the Guardian
mhm,
article.
mhm,
What happens if her body changes?
mhm,
That's the problem. What happens if your gender changes and then changes back?
mhm.
All these careers were built on life not being long, notably, and that is probably why Lena's book has sold so much because it at least acknowledges that life is long
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
there's a
and that
comeback.
she did something after Girls.
Yes.
And I think another reason that this book has sold so well is I think it came out at the right moment. It came out right after a lot of millennials rewatched Girls or Gen Z discovered it for the first time.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, it did. It
She
was
got really lucky on the timing.
she absolutely did. She made too much, which was kind of like it was the victim narrative, but then she rode a really helpful wave towards
Yeah.
book sales. Yeah.
Well, we should probably wrap up, Raph. Is there anything you want to tease that you're working on now? Anything we should expect from you soon?
Well,
What are you writing?
Lee, I'm writing a novel. I have been for some time. It is tentatively titled Great White Male, and it really concerns a lot of my just what we're talking about, the kind of like wild bodily experience of transition, detransition, but more broadly, it's also a caper. It's also a crime novel. Don't worry. Um, so there's working on that. I'm working on Ricky still had some essays, actually, some essays about 2010s feminism and the empowerment of plastic surgery. So, like, that might be coming out soon in different publications. Yeah, I thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited about I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know there's always wonderful, wonderful Lee Stein stuff in the works. So,
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to write about fame sick for Sunday. I have an idea for
yes,
so for people who aren't
send
sick
me
of
that.
me talking about fame sick. Well,
Oh,
we'll
I'm
continue.
extremely ready. Yes.
Always good to
So
see you. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks
thank
for
you.
weighing in the comments. Nuance maxing. Okay, we're taking nuance maxing as a new coinage from this company.
Oh, the worst neologism ever. Sorry, everybody. Okay.
Okay, bye everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.